Graham Platner was right about one thing. On election night last Tuesday, he said, "This is not about me at all. This is a movement about us." And he then defined that movement as being about the far too many working far too hard and struggling far too much at the hands of the ruling class. That was not just a campaign line, that was a great reveal. Because when a Democratic candidate starts talking about workers struggling at the hands of the ruling class, he's no longer speaking the language of the old Democratic reform. He is speaking the language of class struggle. And that is the language of Karl Marx. Marxist ideology is built around the idea that history is driven by conflict between classes. Workers versus owners, the oppressed versus the oppressors, the exploited versus the exploiters. That is the dialectic. One class holds power, another suffers under it. And politics becomes the struggle to overturn that power relationship. So when Platner talks about the ruling class, he is not simply saying groceries are too expensive, rent is too high, or that healthcare costs too much. He's identifying an enemy, the ruling class. And in that movement, the ruling class can mean billionaires, corporations, Wall Street, landlords, lobbyists, donors, media elites, political insiders, universities, and anyone seen as benefiting from the system while everyone else struggles beneath it. It gives frustration a target. It tells voters their struggles are not accidental. They are not merely the result of inflation, bad policy, global competition, or government mismanagement. They are the result of a system designed by powerful people for powerful people. That's not your father's Democratic Party. That is not the party of the past 90 years. The old Democratic Party argued that capitalism needed guardrails. The New Deal said workers needed protection. The Great Society said government should expand opportunity. The Clinton and Obama wings talked about growth, education, healthcare, diversity, and reform. But this movement is saying something radically different. It is saying the system itself is the problem. And now Platner's shows the next evolution. In the not so distant past, Democratic leaders would have tossed a scandal-ridden candidate like Platner aside faster than you could say Maine lobster roll. Think Al Franken. But Platner shows that when the movement is strong enough, the candidate no longer has to carry the campaign by himself. The campaign in the Democratic Party carries it for him. That is why the scandals do not land the same way. In traditional politics, personal conduct can define the candidate. In movement politics, personal conduct is often weighed against the larger cause. The pundits are looking at the man. The movement is looking at the class struggle he represents. That is the deeper divide inside the Democratic Party. On one side are the institutional Democrats still trying to manage the coalition, when swing voters talk about competence and preserve the broad center-left brand. On the other side is the movement pushing a politics built around class, power, inequality, landlords, corporations, billionaires, and the ruling class. One side wants to reform capitalism. The other increasingly asks whether capitalism itself is the problem. That is why the Democratic Party is not unpopular because it has no agenda. It is unpopular because it has too many competing ideologies. And heading into 2026 and beyond in 2028, this movement energy can't be dismissed. It will be the strongest in the blue states, urban centers, low turnout primaries, but it can show up anywhere. Even in red states, if Republicans get complacent, fail to energize their base, or assume registration alone will save them, they can get surprised. Movements do not need to persuade everyone. They need intensity, organization, and an opening. Platner was right. This is bigger than him, and that is exactly why it matters this week. You can read about it this week at Zoose.substack.com.